Morning, class. Welcome back. Please take your seats. We're going to continue with our lesson on World War II, picking up with the Holocaust. And to start today's lesson, we are going to read a children's book called Gifts from the Enemy, written by Trudy Ludwig. Now, I know you guys are seventh graders, and you might be thinking that, hey, this book is for kids. We're too old for this, but it will directly tie in to our next week's lesson when we start reading Night by Elie Wiesel and help give you another perspective of somebody who did spend time in a concentration camp during World War II. So my first question for you guys this morning is going to be, what is a concentration camp? Who knows what that is? Exactly. A concentration camp was basically a prison or a work camp where the Nazis sent Jewish citizens, and they sent them there to die, to work until they died. And if you would look at it as one of our prisons today, there's really no comparison to how brutal and how horrible their experiences were there. So, Gifts from the Enemy, written by Trudy Ludwig, is actually based on a novel written by Alter Weiner. His novel is called From a Name to a Number, and it discusses his time as a Jewish person in 5 concentration camps. So instead of reading that whole novel and then reading Night, we're going to just read this short story. So let's get started. Before we do any reading, I want you guys to take out your reading journals and jot down these questions. We're going to think about these questions as we go along with the story. I don't want you guys to answer these as we read. I want you to pay attention to the story, but just know that you will be getting into your reading groups afterwards and answering these, and we will be discussing as a class. So the first question is, what are some similarities between your childhood and Alter Weiner's? How did lives of Jewish people change after Hitler rose to power? Why do you think the German woman helped Alter? And do you think that all Germans hated Jewish people during World War II? Why do you think the German people went along and supported Hitler's ideologies? All right, so if you guys have those written down, we are going to start Gifts from the Enemy, written by Trudy Ludwig. There are those who say that what I've lived through never happened. But I'm here to tell you that it did. My name is Alter Weiner, and I'm an ordinary person with an extraordinary past. Many years ago, I was young like you. I lived with my family in Czarnow, a small town in the southwest corner of Poland. Back then, our home had no indoor plumbing. We had no refrigerators, cell phones, TVs, or computers. We didn't even own a car. We mostly walked to get where we needed to go. It was a much simpler time, much simpler way of life. Still, our home was full of books, food, laughter, and love. Now take a second, guys. Could you imagine living in a time with no indoor plumbing, with no refrigerators, cell phones, nothing, no technology? It's pretty crazy to think that we were just there only 70 years ago. So it's looking at that, it's something that we can appreciate how far we've come as well. Every Friday, Papa invited a poor student or a homeless person to share our Sabbath dinner with us. At sunset, we welcomed the Sabbath with the blessing and the lighting of candles, followed by the blessing of Mama's freshly baked challah. I couldn't wait to get a slice of the bread, all soft and warm in my hands. Biting into it was pure heaven. Mama was a wonderful cook. She spent hours in the kitchen, preparing mouth-watering meals for Papa, my brothers Shmuel, Hirsch, and myself. Mama also had a caring heart. There are 2 ways to deal with the cold, she'd often say. Put on a fur coat to be warm, or light a fire so that others can be warm too. Mama made sure we provided food and shelter to those less fortunate than us, both in times of peace and later during the war. On September 1st, 1939, German Nazi soldiers Under the orders of their leader, Adolf Hitler attacked my country. Poland's army wasn't strong enough to defend our borders and people. Thousands of us tried to flee, including my own family, but we had nowhere to go. Hitler's army had us surrounded. Papa, a thoughtful, peaceful man, taught my brothers and me to reject hatred. Hitler taught his people to embrace it. Their hatred started with words, hurtful words first whispered, then shouted at neighbors and strangers alike. Those words took root in the hearts and minds of many and grew into something worse. Do you guys see the picture here in the corner? It looks like a Jewish home or maybe even a store has a brick thrown through it. So we can just see how one man just spread hate across an entire continent, even against neighbors that people have known for years. When Hitler came into power, he ordered his army to seek out, imprison, and destroy millions of people, old, young, who looked, thought, and acted differently than his people. Hitler hated differences. The German army's occupation was hard on everyone in our town, but it was the hardest on the Jewish people because we were on the top of Hitler's hate list. Our freedom and rights were taken away. We couldn't go to school. We couldn't pray in our houses of worship. We couldn't even visit our favorite parks or playgrounds. Curfews forced us to be prisoners in our own homes. Many good and decent people lost their lives to this hatred, including my own friends and family. I was 13 years old when the German soldiers marched into town and killed poor Papa. I was 14 in the middle of the night when they forced their way into our home and took my older brother Shmuel away. I was 15 when the Nazis came for me. I didn't even have a chance to hug Mama and little Hirsch goodbye. It was the last time I would ever see them again. I and many others were herded like cattle into trains headed for destinations far, far away. Far, far away from kindness, compassion, respect, and dignity. I was shipped from one prison labor camp to another, living in very crowded, dirty conditions. Day after day, I was forced to work long hours. The guards showed no mercy in their cruel treatment of the prisoners, and there was never enough food to eat. I was always hungry, so very hungry. I kept thinking about Mama and her wonderful challah. I would have done anything to have just one small taste of home-baked bread. Months went by, then years. Lack of food and so much suffering kept my belly empty and my heart heavy. Just when I no longer had the strength or will to make it through another day, something amazing happened. I received gifts from a stranger, not just any stranger, a stranger who I thought was my enemy. It happened when I was working in a German factory. Posted on the factory's wall were signs addressed to German employees. Do not look at the prisoners. Do not talk to the prisoners. Do not give anything to the prisoners. If you do, you will be doomed. One day, a German worker made eye contact with me. When she saw she had my attention, she pointed her finger at a box on the floor. Curious, I went to that spot when no one was looking and I peeked under the box. What did I find? The most wonderful gift I could ask for. A bread and cheese sandwich. I couldn't believe my eyes. I grabbed the sandwich and gobbled it up before anyone noticed. Even more surprising, this worker left a bread and cheese sandwich under that very same box every day for the 30 days I worked in her building. Guys, take a second to just look at the expression on his face. A simple bread and cheese sandwich gave him the will to live again, to keep fighting forward and to persevere. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never experienced anything so simple having such an impact on my life. So it just goes to show what kind of conditions these people were forced to live in. Treated like cattle, it said on the other page. It was truly hell for them. And so the only way we can learn about this is through reading their stories. So let's move on. Why, I asked myself, would this stranger be willing to risk her life, not once, but 30 times for me? Why me? Did she have a son my age and feel sorry for me? Was she a religious person who believed it was her duty to help the helpless? To this day, I don't know her reason for feeding me. What I do know is that she gave me the energy and hope to survive. Her acts of kindness also made me stop and think, how can I believe all Germans are my enemy when this woman, a German, had risked her own life for me? That's when I learned my most important lesson in life. There are the kind and the cruel in every group of people. How those you meet in life treat you is far more important than who they are. In May of 1945, the Russian army arrived at our camp, telling us that the war was over, Germany was defeated, and we were free at last. I tried to track down the identity of my brave German hero, but I couldn't find her. Still, not a day goes by that when I don't think of this wonderful woman and thank her for her courage and kindness. It has been many years since the war. I'm much older now, but my memories of the past are still strong. Every Friday at sunset, I welcome the Sabbath with the lighting and blessing of candles, followed by the blessing of challah. Now, when I bite into the bread, I don't just taste heaven, I taste freedom. All right, guys, so here are the questions again that I want you to think about with your tables, with your reading groups. I really want you to think about the similarities between yours and Alter's lives. And then we'll discuss the differences also afterwards. Make sure that you are staying on task. I'll be walking around. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. And make sure you're taking good notes. Like I said before at the beginning of this lesson, it'll lead into our next week when we start Night by Elie Wiesel. All right, thank you.